Hey guys, imagine spending your entire day wearing a heavy leather coat that hasn't been washed in months, stuffed with herbs that smell like someone set fire to a spice cupboard. Your face is trapped inside a bird-shaped mask, filled with rotting flowers and dried lavender, and every breath tastes like you're licking the inside of an old wardrobe. You're walking through streets covered in horse droppings and spoiled cabbage, knocking on doors where people are desperate, frightened, and definitely not happy to see you. There's no coffee to wake you up, no shower waiting at home, and your dinner tonight is probably stale bread, with some questionable cheese that's been sitting in a warm room all week. If you think your job is tough, try being a medieval plague doctor for just one day. You'd be begging to go back to your office chair and Monday morning meetings. So if you're enjoying this, hit that like button and subscribe for more historical nightmares. I'm genuinely curious to know where you're watching from, so tell me in the comments what country you're in and what time it is right now. So let's step into the world of a medieval plague doctor and find out exactly why you wouldn't survive. Your day starts before the sun comes up, and there's no gentle alarm or snooze button to ease you into it. Someone is banging on your door with the urgency of a delivery driver who's double parked, except this person is genuinely terrified and needs you to come see a patient right now. You're still half asleep, your mouth tastes like you've been chewing on old socks, and your back aches from sleeping on a mattress that's basically a sack stuffed with straw and the occasional ambitious flea. You stumble out of bed in the dark because candles are expensive and you're not wasting one just to find your trousers. Your feet hit the cold stone floor and it's like stepping onto a frozen car park in January, except there's no heating to look forward to and your socks have holes in them. You pull on your clothes, which are the same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before that, because washing is an event that happens maybe twice a year if you're feeling ambitious. The fabric is stiff in places you'd rather not think about, and there's a smell coming from your shirt that suggests it's developing its own ecosystem. You splash some water on your face from a jug that's been sitting in your room all night, and it's so cold it makes your teeth hurt. There's no mirror, which is probably a mercy, because you look like someone who's been dragged through a hedge backwards and then left in a ditch to reconsider their life choices. Now comes the fun part. You have to put on your plague doctor uniform, which is about as comfortable as wrapping yourself in a leather tent and then standing next to a bonfire. The coat is long, heavy, and coated in wax to supposedly protect you from bad air, which means it's also completely stiff and makes a creaking noise every time you move. It's like wearing a sleeping bag made of bin liners, except it weighs as much as a small dog and smells like a candle shop that's been set on fire. The coat goes all the way down to your ankles, so walking feels like you're wading through treacle, and if you need to sit down or bend over, good luck. You're basically a human tent pole. Then there's the gloves, thick leather gloves that go up to your elbows, because apparently your hands are the most dangerous part of your body and need to be imprisoned. They're stiff, they're sweaty, and they make it impossible to do anything requiring even a tiny bit of coordination. Imagine trying to pick up a pen while wearing oven mitts, except the oven mitts are also damp and smell like a wet dog that's been rolling in old mushrooms. You can't feel anything through them, so when you're trying to examine a patient or pick up a bottle of medicine, it's like playing a game where you're blindfolded and also slightly drunk. But the real star of the show is the mask. The plague doctor mask is the stuff of nightmares, and wearing it is somehow worse than looking at it. It's shaped like a giant bird's beak, because someone in the past decided that looking like a demented crow was the height of medical fashion. The beak is about as long as your forearm and stuffed with herbs, dried flowers, camphor, and whatever else people thought might protect you from bad smells. The theory was that disease travelled through stinky air, so if you filled your mask with nice smells, you'd be safe. In practice, it's like shoving a bouquet of dead roses up your nose and then trying to breathe through it for 12 hours straight. The inside of the mask is dark, hot, and claustrophobic. The eye holes are tiny, so your vision is reduced to 2 small circles of dim light, like looking through the wrong end of a pair of binoculars. You can't see your feet, you can't see what's directly in front of you, and you definitely can't see anyone sneaking up beside you. The herbs inside the beak start to warm up from your breath, and they release this overwhelming stench that's somehow both musty and sharp at the same time. It's like breathing inside a spice drawer that's been left in a sauna. Your nose starts to itch within 5 minutes, and you can't scratch it because your hands are trapped in those ridiculous gloves, and your face is locked inside a leather prison. Breathing is an adventure. Every inhale tastes like you're licking a handful of dried lavender mixed with old potpourri, and every exhale makes the inside of the mask humid and sticky. Within an hour, the inside of the beak is damp with condensation, and it feels like you're breathing inside a used gym bag. Your face is sweating, your nose is running, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You just have to stand there, looking like a 6-foot pigeon, while moisture drips down the inside of your mask, and your dignity quietly packs its bags and leaves. And you can't take the mask off. Not in public, anyway. You're supposed to wear it the entire time you're working, because taking it off would expose you to the bad air and also ruin your whole mysterious plague doctor image. So you're stuck, you're hot, you're uncomfortable, you can't see properly, you can't breathe properly, and you smell like a florist's shop that's been closed for 3 months. And your day has barely even started. You grab your stick. Every plague doctor carries a long wooden stick, about the length of a broom handle, which you use to examine patients without actually touching them. It's your medieval version of social distancing, except instead of standing 2 meters apart, you're prodding people with a stick, like you're trying to check if they're still alive from across the room. The stick is also useful for lifting blankets, pointing at things, and occasionally fending off angry relatives who think you're a charlatan, which, to be fair, you might be. Medical knowledge in this era is about as reliable as a weather forecast written by someone who's never been outside. You step out into the street and the smell hits you like a physical wall. The mask helps a bit, but not enough. The street is a mixture of mud, horse droppings, rotting vegetables, and the contents of chamber pots that people have cheerfully thrown out of their windows during the night. There's no drainage, no bins, no street cleaning. Everything just sits there, marinating in the sun or the rain, creating a rich and varied stench that changes depending on the weather. Today it's warm, which means everything is fermenting nicely. You try to breathe through your mouth, but that just means you're tasting it instead of smelling it, and somehow that's worse. You arrive at the house of your first patient, and before you even knock, you know it's going to be grim. The door is old, the wood is swollen and cracked, and there's a smell leaking out from under it that suggests something inside has gone very wrong. You knock with your stick, because touching anything with your hands is a bad idea, and after a long pause, someone opens the door. It's a grown man, probably the patient's brother or cousin, and he looks like he hasn't slept in a week. His eyes are red, his clothes are rumpled, and he's got that desperate expression people get when they've run out of options and you're the last one they can call. He lets you in without a word, and you step into the house. The inside is dark because windows are small and glass is expensive, so most places just have wooden shutters that block out most of the light. There's a fireplace in the corner with a weak fire struggling to stay alive, and the room smells like smoke, old cooking, and unwashed bodies. The floor is just packed dirt covered with straw, which is supposed to soak up spills and make things nicer, but mostly it just turns into a damp, musty carpet that smells like a barn. Your boots squelch slightly as you walk, and you try not to think about what you're stepping in. The patient is lying on a bed in the corner. The bed is just a wooden frame with a mattress that's seen better days, covered in blankets that look like they've been handed down through several generations and possibly a couple of plagues. You approach slowly, stick in hand, trying to look professional and confident, which is difficult when you're dressed like a rejected mascot for a bird sanctuary. The patient is a grown woman, maybe in her 30s, and she looks awful. Her face is pale and sweaty, her hair is stuck to her forehead, and she's shivering under a pile of blankets despite the fact that the room is warm and stuffy. You're supposed to examine her, but you're not allowed to touch her directly, so you use your stick to gently poke and prod. You lift the blanket with the end of the stick to check for swellings, rashes, or other signs of illness. This is about as effective as trying to diagnose someone over a video call with a bad connection, but it's all you've got. The stick is smooth and polished from use, and it's probably covered in more germs than a handrail on public transport, but nobody's invented the concept of sterilization yet, so you just keep using the same stick on every patient and hoping for the best. The woman groans and tries to tell you her symptoms, but her voice is weak and raspy, and you can barely hear her through your mask. The mask muffles sound like you've got a pillow wrapped around your head, so conversations are a constant game of "sorry, what?" and "can you say that again?" You lean in closer, which just makes the inside of your mask hotter and damper, and try to make out what she's saying. Something about fever, aches, exhaustion, all the classic hits. You nod wisely, as if this information is incredibly useful, and you definitely know what to do next. The truth is, you don't have a clue. Medical training in this period is less about science and more about tradition, guesswork, and a hefty dose of optimism. The leading theory is that disease is caused by miasma, which is bad air that smells wrong. So most treatments involve either avoiding bad smells or creating good smells to chase the bad ones away. You've got a bag with you that contains various herbs, powders, and bottles of liquid that may or may not do anything helpful. You pull out a small pouch of dried herbs and hand it to the patient's relative, instructing him to burn it in the room to cleanse the air. He takes it with the kind of desperate gratitude that suggests he'll try anything, even if it's clearly nonsense. Next, you recommend phlebotomy, because of course you do. Phlebotomy is the aspirin of medieval medicine. Got a headache? Phlebotomy. Got a fever? Phlebotomy. Got a broken leg? Believe it or not, phlebotomy. The idea is that the body has too much of certain fluids, called humours, and you need to balance them out by removing some. It's like trying to fix a car by draining the oil because the engine is making a funny noise. You don't actually do the phlebotomy yourself. That's a job for a barber surgeon, who's basically a hairdresser with a knife and a worrying amount of confidence. You just recommend it and move on. You also suggest a poultice. A poultice is a warm, mushy mixture of herbs and other ingredients that you slap onto the skin to draw out illness. It's like a face mask, but medieval and less relaxing. Common ingredients include bread, onions, garlic, mustard, and sometimes animal fat, all mashed together into a paste that smells like a compost bin having a midlife crisis. You don't have time to make one right now, so you just give instructions and hope someone follows them. The poultice will probably do nothing, but at least it keeps people busy and gives them the feeling that they're doing something useful. You make a few more vague recommendations involving rest, prayer, and avoiding bad air, and then you prepare to leave. The family looks at you with a mixture of hope and despair, as if they know you haven't really helped, but they're grateful you showed up anyway. You're basically a very expensive placebo in a bird costume. You collect your fee, which is usually a few coins, or sometimes a chicken or a sack of grain, because cash isn't always available, and the barter system is alive and well. You tuck the payment into a pouch on your belt, wave your stick in what you hope is a reassuring manner, and head for the door. Leaving the house is a relief. The air outside is still full of horse droppings and general street filth, but at least it's moving, and you're not trapped in a dark, smoky room with a desperate family watching your every move. You take a deep breath, which is a mistake, because you just inhale a lungful of hot, herb-scented air from inside your mask, and it makes you cough. The coughing makes your mask shift slightly, and now it's sitting at an angle on your face, and one of the eye holes isn't lined up properly. You have to stop in the middle of the street and fiddle with the straps to adjust it, all while trying to maintain some shred of dignity. A couple of people walk past and stare. One of them laughs. You ignore them and keep walking. Your next appointment is on the other side of town, which means a lovely long walk through the bustling medieval streets. The streets are narrow and crowded, full of people going about their business, and none of them are in any hurry to get out of your way. You're trying to move quickly, but your coat is heavy and stiff. Your vision is limited to 2 tiny holes, and people keep stepping in front of you. It's like trying to navigate a shopping centre during a sale, except everyone smells worse and there's animal droppings everywhere. You bump into a man carrying a basket of fish, and he gives you a filthy look and mutters something rude. You apologise, but it comes out muffled through your mask, and he probably thinks you're insulting him back. The sun is climbing higher, and it's getting warm. Your coat is waxed and doesn't breathe, so you're essentially wearing a waterproof oven. Sweat is pooling under your arms, trickling down your back, and gathering in places you didn't know could sweat. Your shirt is sticking to your skin, and every step makes the fabric rub and chafe. The gloves are damp on the inside, and your hands feel like they're marinating in their own moisture. It's like wearing rubber gloves for 8 hours straight, except these gloves are leather and somehow even less comfortable. You finally reach the next house, and you're already exhausted. Your legs ache from walking on uneven cobblestones in heavy boots. Your shoulders are sore from the weight of the coat, and your neck is stiff from trying to see through those ridiculous eye holes. You knock on the door with your stick, and this time a grown woman answers. She looks stressed, tired, and not particularly pleased to see you, which is the standard reaction. You're not exactly bringing good news when you show up. You're more like a walking reminder that something has gone horribly wrong. She leads you upstairs, which is a new kind of hell. The staircase is narrow, steep, and dark, and you're wearing a coat that's basically a stiff leather tube. You have to lift the front of the coat with one hand and grip your stick with the other, and you still manage to trip on the steps twice. The woman ahead of you doesn't slow down, so you're stumbling up the stairs like a drunk penguin, trying not to fall backwards and tumble all the way down. The mask makes it impossible to see your feet, so you're just guessing where the steps are and hoping for the best. You finally reach the top, out of breath and sweating even more, and you have to pause for a moment to let your heart rate come back down. The patient is in a small room that's even darker than the one downstairs. There's one tiny window with a shutter that's half closed, and the air is thick and stale. The smell is intense, a mixture of unwashed bodies, old blankets, and something sour that you can't quite identify. It's the kind of smell that makes you want to breathe through your mouth, but then you're tasting it, and that's not better. You approach the bed, stick in hand, and start your examination routine again. Poking, prodding, asking questions that no one can hear properly, and pretending you have any idea what you're doing. This patient is a grown man, probably in his 40s, and he's in bad shape. He's shivering, groaning, and clutching his stomach like he's trying to hold something in. You ask him what hurts, and he mumbles something about cramps, fever, and exhaustion. You nod and make thoughtful noises, which is your default response when you don't have a clue. You check for visible signs of illness, which mostly involves looking at his skin and seeing if there's anything obviously wrong. There's a rash on his arms, which could mean anything from an allergic reaction to something serious. But without modern diagnostics, it's all just guesswork. You pull out your bag of tricks again and start recommending treatments. More herbs to burn, more rest, more prayer. You suggest a tonic made from vinegar, honey, and some crushed herbs, which is supposed to balance the humours and restore health. In reality, it's just a drink that tastes bad and probably does nothing, but people expect you to prescribe something, so you do. You also recommend keeping the room well aired, which is ironic because you're currently standing in a room that smells like it hasn't been aired in months, but you say it anyway because it sounds professional. The family asks if he's going to recover, and you give them the classic non-answer that doctors have been using since the dawn of time. You say something vague like, "We must wait and see," or "With rest and care there is hope," which translates to, "I have no idea, but I'm not going to admit that." They nod and look relieved, as if your vague reassurance is somehow comforting. You collect your fee, a couple of coins this time, and make your way back down the death trap staircase, only tripping once on the way down. Back outside, the sun is fully up now, and the streets are busy. Market stalls are set up along the main road, selling everything from vegetables to cloth to live chickens that are squawking and flapping in cages. The noise is overwhelming. People are shouting to advertise their goods, animals are making a racket, and there's a constant background hum of conversations, arguments, and the rumble of cartwheels on cobblestones. It's like being at a festival, except there's no music and everything smells like a farm. You weave through the crowd, trying not to bump into anyone or knock over a stall with your stick. A chicken escapes from a cage and runs past you, chased by an angry vendor. A cart loaded with barrels nearly runs over your foot. A dog sniffs at your coat and then backs away, apparently offended by the smell. You keep walking, eyes fixed on the ground because looking up is pointless when your vision is limited to 2 tiny circles. You're supposed to visit at least 6 more patients today, and it's not even midday yet. Your feet are already aching, your back is stiff, and you're so hungry you could eat a whole loaf of bread in one sitting. But there's no time to stop for food. You've got appointments to keep, and if you're late, people get upset and start complaining, and then your reputation suffers and you get fewer clients. So you push through the discomfort and keep going, because that's what the job demands. Your next stop is in a slightly nicer part of town, where the houses are bigger and the streets are a bit less covered in filth. The people here have money, which means they can afford to pay you more, but it also means they have higher expectations. You knock on a solid wooden door with fancy metal fittings, and a servant answers. He's a grown man, probably in his 20s, wearing cleaner clothes than most people you've seen today. He looks you up and down with barely concealed disdain, as if you're a tradesman who's come to the wrong entrance, and then reluctantly lets you in. The inside of the house is a different world. There are actual rugs on the floor, tapestries on the walls, and furniture that looks like it was made by someone who knew what they were doing. The air smells better too. There's incense burning somewhere, and the windows are larger, letting in more light. You almost feel out of place in your ridiculous bird outfit, like you've wandered into a fancy restaurant wearing a costume from a clearance bin. The servant leads you to a private chamber where the patient is waiting. It's a grown woman, probably in her 30s, lying in a proper bed with embroidered blankets and pillows that look soft and clean. She's clearly not as ill as the other patients you've seen today. She's sitting up, she's alert, and she's looking at you with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. You get the feeling she's only called you because it's the fashionable thing to do, not because she's actually desperate for help. You go through your routine again, but this time you have an audience. The patient's husband is standing in the corner, watching you with his arms crossed, and the servant is lurking by the door. You feel like you're performing a play, except you don't know your lines and the audience is judging you harshly. You poke the patient gently with your stick, ask her about her symptoms, and nod sagely as she describes a mild headache and some tiredness. It's clear she's not seriously ill, but you can't just say that and leave. You have to put on a show. You pull out your most impressive-looking bottles and pouches, laying them out on a side table like you're a magician preparing a trick. You recommend a herbal tea made from chamomile and mint, which is actually pretty harmless and might even help her relax. You suggest she avoid heavy foods and get plenty of rest, which is advice that works for almost anything. You throw in some nonsense about balancing her humours and ensuring the air in her chamber is fresh and sweet. The husband nods, the patient looks satisfied, and you collect your fee, which is significantly larger than the previous ones. You leave the house feeling like a fraud, but at least you're a well-paid fraud. By mid-afternoon, you're seriously questioning your career choices. You've been walking for hours, and your legs feel like they're made of old rope. The streets are still crowded, and the heat is relentless. Your coat is like a portable sauna, and you're fairly sure you've sweated out about half your body weight. The mask is so damp inside that it started to smell like wet leather mixed with decomposing flowers, which is a new and special kind of torture. Every breath is a battle between getting enough air and not gagging on the stench. You arrive at another house, and this one is back in the poorer part of town. The building is leaning slightly to one side, as if it's tired and considering just giving up and collapsing. The door is propped open, and you can hear voices inside. Someone is crying, someone else is praying, and there's a general atmosphere of panic. You step inside, and immediately you know this is going to be one of the difficult ones. The room is packed with people, all of them crowded around a single bed, and they all turn to look at you as you enter. There's a moment of silence, and then someone starts shouting at you to do something, to help, to fix this. You push your way through the crowd with your stick, trying to project authority and calm, which is difficult when you look like a carnival reject. The patient is a grown man, older than the others you've seen today, and he's in a bad way. He's barely conscious, his breathing is shallow, and his skin has a greyish tinge that suggests things are not going well. The family is desperate, grabbing at your coat, asking questions, begging you to save him. You gently push them back with your stick and try to focus. The problem is, there's not much you can do. You don't have antibiotics, you don't have IV fluids, you don't even have a stethoscope. You've got herbs, a stick, and a vague understanding of medieval medical theory that's mostly wrong. You go through the motions anyway, checking his pulse by pressing your gloved fingers against his wrist and feeling absolutely nothing through the thick leather. You lift his eyelid with the end of your stick, which is about as useful as it sounds. You ask the family about his symptoms, but they're all talking at once and you can't make out half of what they're saying through your mask. You recommend the usual treatments, herbs, rest, prayer. But even as you're saying it, you can see the disappointment in their faces. They know it's not enough. They know you're just going through the motions. But what else can you do? You're not a miracle worker. You're just a person in a silly costume with a bag of plants and a lot of confidence you don't really feel. You stay for a few more minutes, making comforting noises and trying to look like you're doing something useful, and then you quietly excuse yourself and leave. The crying follows you out into the street. This is the part of the job that nobody tells you about. It's not just about the discomfort and the weird outfit and the bad smells. It's about showing up to people's worst moments and knowing that you can't actually help them. It's about being the person they turn to when they've run out of options, and having to pretend that you have answers when you don't. It's about walking away from houses where people are suffering and knowing that there's a good chance they won't be there next time you pass by. You shake it off and keep walking, because if you stop and think about it too much, you'll never make it through the day. You've got more patients to see, more fees to collect, and more streets to trudge through. Your stomach is growling now, a constant rumble that reminds you that one piece of stale bread is not a sufficient meal for a full day of walking and working. You're dreaming of dinner, but dinner is still hours away, and it's probably going to be disappointing anyway. The next house is mercifully uneventful. The patient is a grown woman with a mild fever and a cough, and she's clearly going to be fine. You give her some herbal tea recommendations, suggest she stay warm, and collect your fee without any drama. It's a nice change of pace, and you allow yourself a moment of relief before moving on to the next appointment. The afternoon drags on. You see patient after patient, each one blurring into the next. Fevers, coughs, rashes, aches, exhaustion. Everyone has something wrong with them, and most of the time you're recommending the same handful of treatments over and over again. Herbs, rest, bloodletting, prayer. It's like being a customer service representative, except instead of resetting passwords, you're handing out medieval medical advice that may or may not do anything. You smile, you nod, you collect your fees, and you move on. Your feet are in agony now. The blisters have definitely burst, and there's a hot, stinging sensation every time your heel hits the ground. You're trying to walk in a way that minimizes the pain, which means you're limping slightly, which means you look even more ridiculous than usual. People are staring at you as you hobble past, and you can hear children laughing and pointing. You ignore them, because what are you going to do? Chase them down with your stick? You're tired, you're hungry, and you just want this day to be over. You also need to pee, which is a whole new problem. There are no public toilets. There are barely any private toilets. Most people just use a chamber pot indoors or find a quiet alley outdoors. But you're wearing a full plague doctor outfit, which is not easy to remove in a hurry. The coat goes down to your ankles, the gloves go up to your elbows, and the mask is strapped to your head. If you want to relieve yourself, you're going to have to find somewhere private, take off half your gear, do your business, and then put it all back on again. It's a 15-minute operation, minimum. You find a quiet spot behind a stable, away from prying eyes, and start the complicated process of undressing. The gloves come off first, and your hands are pale and wrinkled from being trapped in leather all day. The air on your skin feels amazing, like you've just stepped out of a sauna. You set the gloves down on a relatively clean patch of ground and start working on the coat. The buttons are stiff and fiddly, and your fingers are clumsy from being confined for so long. It takes forever to undo them all, and by the time you finally get the coat open, you're practically dancing on the spot. You take care of business as quickly as possible, all the while keeping an eye out for anyone who might wander past. The last thing you need is someone catching you midstream and spreading rumours that the plague doctor is a weirdo who hides behind stables. You finish, adjust your clothes, and then face the daunting task of putting everything back on. The coat goes on first, and it's just as heavy and uncomfortable as it was before. The gloves go back on, and your hands immediately start sweating again. The mask is still on your head, because taking that off and putting it back on is more effort than it's worth. You step back out into the street, feeling slightly more human but still deeply uncomfortable. The sun is starting to sink lower in the sky, which means the day is finally coming to an end. You've got one more patient to see, and then you can go home, take off this ridiculous outfit, and collapse into your lumpy straw bed. The thought keeps you going as you trudge through the streets one more time. The final patient of the day lives in a house that's slightly better than average, which is a relief. You're too tired for drama, and you're hoping this will be quick and easy. You knock, you're let in, and you're led to a small room where a grown man is sitting up in bed, looking bored rather than ill. He's got a cold, basically. A runny nose, a bit of a cough, nothing serious. You give him the standard advice, hand over a pouch of herbs and collect your fee. He doesn't seem particularly grateful, but you don't care. You're done. The day is over. You finally make it back to your lodgings, which is a small, cramped room above a bakery. The bakery is a mixed blessing. On the one hand, it means your room smells like bread, which is better than most of the other smells you encounter on a daily basis. On the other hand, it's warm. Very warm. The ovens are directly below you, and they pump heat up through the floorboards all day and night. In winter, this is wonderful. In summer, it's like living inside a bread oven yourself. Tonight, after a long day in a waxed leather coat, the last thing you want is more heat, but you don't have a choice. You can't afford anything better. You climb the narrow staircase to your room, each step a painful reminder of the blisters on your feet. Your legs feel like they've been filled with wet sand, and your knees are threatening to give out entirely. You reach your door, push it open, and step inside. The room is tiny. There's a bed, a small table, a wooden chest for your belongings, and not much else. The ceiling is low, and if you stand up too quickly, you'll hit your head on the beam that runs across the middle. The walls are bare wood, and there are gaps between the planks where you can see through to the street below. Privacy is a luxury you can't afford. You close the door behind you and immediately start stripping off the plague doctor gear. This is the best part of the day. The gloves come off first and you flex your fingers, feeling the blood flow back into them. Your hands are red and wrinkled, and they smell like damp leather and sweat. You drop the gloves onto the floor and move onto the coat. The buttons are stiff and your fingers are tired, but you persevere. One by one, the buttons come undone, and you peel the coat off like you're shedding a second skin. The relief is immediate and overwhelming. Cool air hits your sweat-soaked shirt, and you let out a long, shaky breath. The mask comes off last. You unbuckle the straps at the back of your head, and the whole contraption slides forward. You pull it off, and the sudden flood of fresh air is glorious. Your face is damp and red. Your hair is plastered to your forehead, and your nose is running, but you don't care. You're free. You drop the mask onto the table and stand there for a moment, just breathing. Real air. No herbs, no leather, no suffocating heat. It's the best thing you've felt all day. You pour some water from a jug into a wooden bowl and splash it onto your face. The water is lukewarm and slightly stale, but it's still refreshing. You scrub at your skin, trying to wash away the sweat and grime, and then you dry off with a rag that's seen better days. Your face feels raw and tender, and there's a red mark across your nose and cheeks where the mask was pressing down all day. You look like you've been sunburned, except it's a mask burn, which is somehow more embarrassing. Your clothes are soaked through with sweat, and they're starting to smell ripe. You peel off your shirt, which is stuck to your back in places, and drop it onto the floor with the rest of your gear. Your skin is pale and clammy, and there are red marks everywhere from where the fabric has been rubbing and chafing. You've got a rash under your arms that stings when you move, and your back is covered in little red bumps from the heat and moisture. It's like your body is punishing you for making it spend the day in a portable oven. You sit down on the edge of the bed, which creaks loudly under your weight, and slowly pull off your boots. This is the moment you've been dreading. The boots are stiff leather, and they've been rubbing against your heels all day. You ease the first one off, and the relief is instant, but it's quickly followed by a sharp, stinging pain as the air hits the raw skin. You look down and see that the blisters have definitely burst, and your heel is red and angry looking. The second boot is just as bad. You drop both boots onto the floor and sit there, wiggling your toes and wincing at the discomfort. Dinner is waiting for you on the table. The baker's wife brought it up earlier, bless her. It's a bowl of pottage, which is basically a thick soup made from whatever vegetables were cheapest at the market, mixed with some barley and maybe a tiny bit of meat if you're lucky. Today, you're not lucky. It's all vegetables and grains, and it's gone cold while you were out. You eat it anyway, because you're starving, and cold pottage is better than no pottage. It's bland, mushy, and has the texture of wallpaper paste, but you shovel it down with a wooden spoon and try to pretend it's delicious. There's also a chunk of bread, which is slightly stale but still edible. You tear off pieces and dip them in the pottage to soften them up, and you chew slowly, savouring the fact that you're finally sitting down and eating. Your jaw aches from the effort of chewing the tough bread, and your stomach gurgles as it tries to process the sudden influx of food after a day of near starvation. You wash it all down with some weak ale, which is safer to drink than water because the brewing process kills most of the nasty stuff. The ale is sour and flat, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. After dinner, you're faced with the question of what to do with the rest of your evening. The sun has set, and the room is getting dark. You've got one candle, which you're saving for emergencies, so you're basically sitting in the gloom. There's no electricity, no internet, no television. Entertainment options are limited. You could go to a tavern, but you're too tired and too sore to face more walking and more crowds. You could read, but books are expensive and rare, and you don't own any. You could pray, but you've done enough pretending to be pious for one day. So you just sit there, on the edge of your bed, staring at the wall and listening to the sounds of the street below. There are voices, the clatter of cartwheels, the occasional bark of a dog. Someone is singing badly. Someone else is arguing loudly. The bakery ovens are still going, and you can hear the crackle of the fire and the thump of dough being kneaded. It's a strange kind of lullaby, and despite the noise, you're starting to feel drowsy. You lie down on the bed, which is about as comfortable as lying on a sack of potatoes. The mattress is stuffed with straw, and it crackles and shifts every time you move. There are lumps in all the wrong places, and the straw pokes through the fabric and scratches at your skin. The blanket is rough wool and it's itchy, but it's all you've got. You pull it up over yourself and try to find a position that doesn't hurt. Your feet are throbbing, your back is aching, and your neck is stiff, but eventually, exhaustion wins out. Just as you're drifting off, you feel something crawling on your arm. You slap at it instinctively and something small and hard crunches under your hand. Fleas. Of course, the bed is infested with them, just like every other bed in the city. They live in the straw, in the blankets, in your clothes. They bite you while you sleep, leaving itchy red welts all over your body. You're so used to them by now that you barely react. You just brush the dead flea off your arm and close your eyes again. Sleep comes in fits and starts. You're too uncomfortable to fall into a deep sleep, so you hover in that strange, half-awake state where you're sort of resting but not really. You dream about walking, endless walking, through streets that never end. You dream about patients, faceless and desperate, grabbing at you with cold hands. You dream about the mask, suffocating and heavy, pressing down on your face until you can't breathe. You wake up several times, confused and disoriented, and then you remember where you are and you lie back down and try again. At some point in the night, you hear a loud crash from the street below. Shouting, the sound of breaking wood, more shouting. You're too tired to get up and look, so you just lie there and listen. Eventually the noise dies down, and the street goes quiet again. You drift back into uneasy sleep, dreaming of birds and beaks and endless suffocating heat. You shuffle over to the water jug and pour yourself a drink. The water is warm and tastes faintly of the wooden barrel it came from, but it's better than nothing. You splash some on your face, trying to wake yourself up, and then you look at the pile of plague doctor gear on the floor. The coat, the gloves, the mask. They're sitting there like a challenge, daring you to put them back on and do it all over again. You sigh, and you start getting dressed. The shirt goes on first. It's the same one you wore yesterday, and it's still damp in places and smells like a gym locker that's never been cleaned. You tell yourself you'll wash it soon, but you know you won't. Washing clothes is a whole production that involves hauling water, heating it up, scrubbing by hand, and then waiting days for things to dry. It's easier to just keep wearing the same clothes until they're so rank that even you can't stand it anymore. The trousers are next, and they're just as bad. Stiff, scratchy, and covered in mystery stains. You pull them on, and they chafe against your legs immediately. Then come the boots, which you've been dreading. You ease your feet in carefully, trying not to put too much pressure on the blisters, but it's impossible. The stiff leather presses right against the raw skin, and you have to bite your lip to keep from yelping. You lace the boots up slowly, wincing with every movement, and then you stand up and take a few experimental steps. It hurts. It's going to hurt all day. There's nothing you can do about it. The coat is waiting for you, heavy and oppressive. You pick it up, and it's still slightly damp from yesterday's sweat. Putting it on feels like wrapping yourself in a wet leather blanket, and the smell hits you immediately. Stale sweat, old herbs, and something musty that you can't quite identify. You button it up, and the familiar weight settles on your shoulders like a lead blanket. Your body already knows what's coming, and it's not happy about it. The gloves are next. You slide your hands in, and they're cold and clammy like shaking hands with a corpse. The leather is stiff, and your fingers don't bend properly. You flex them a few times, trying to get some feeling back, but it's pointless. You're going to be fumbling with everything all day, and there's nothing you can do about it. Finally, the mask. You pick it up and look at it, and for a moment, you seriously consider just not wearing it. But you can't do that. The mask is part of the job. It's what makes you recognizable, what gives you authority. Without it, you're just a weirdo in a long coat. So you strap it on, buckle the straps at the back of your head, and feel the familiar weight settle onto your face. The world narrows down to 2 small circles of light, and the smell of old herbs fills your nose. You take a deep breath, which is a mistake, and then you head for the door. The streets are already busy, and the day is starting to warm up. You join the flow of people heading towards the market, keeping your head down and your stick in hand. Your feet are already aching, and you've only been walking for 5 minutes. You try not to think about how many more hours of this you have ahead of you. You just focus on putting one foot in front of the other, avoiding the horse droppings, and not tripping over your own coat. Your first appointment is at the edge of town, which means a long walk through the market district. The market is in full swing, and it's absolute chaos. Stalls are crammed together, people are shouting, animals are everywhere. There's a man selling live chickens that are squawking and flapping in their cages. There's a woman selling vegetables that look like they've seen better days. There's a butcher with slabs of meat hanging from hooks covered in flies. The noise is overwhelming, and the smell is even worse. It's a mixture of rotten cabbage, animal droppings, unwashed bodies, and something that might be fish but might also be something that used to be fish and is now something else entirely. You push through the crowd, trying to avoid bumping into people, but it's impossible. Your coat is so wide that you're constantly knocking into things. You clip a basket with your elbow and apples go rolling across the ground. The vendor shouts at you and you mumble an apology through your mask, but it comes out muffled and weird, and the vendor just glares at you. You keep walking. A pig runs past you, chased by a red-faced man waving a stick. You have to jump out of the way, which is not easy in a long coat and heavy boots. You stumble, catch yourself, and then immediately step in something soft and squishy. You don't look down. You don't want to know. You just scrape your boot against the cobblestones and keep moving. You finally escape the market and head into a quieter residential area. The streets here are narrower and the buildings are packed tightly together. Laundry is hanging from windows above, dripping down onto the street below. You duck under a damp sheet and keep walking. Your breath is already fogging up the inside of your mask, and your face is hot and sticky. You're starting to sweat, and the day has barely even started. You reach the house and knock with your stick. A grown man answers, looking tired and worried. He leads you inside, and you go through the now familiar routine. Dark room, sick patient, desperate family. This time it's a grown woman with a terrible cough that sounds like her lungs are trying to escape. You listen, you nod, you recommend the usual herbs and rest. You collect your fee and move on. The next few hours are a blur. You walk, you knock, you examine, you prescribe, you collect payment. Every house is the same. Every patient is suffering. Every family is desperate. You're like a machine going through the motions, saying the same things over and over. Your feet are screaming at you. Your back is aching. And the inside of your mask is so damp now that it feels like you're breathing through a wet sponge. Midday arrives, and you're starving again. You find a street vendor selling pies, and you buy one with some of the coins you've earned. The pie is warm, which is nice, but the filling is mysterious. It's supposed to be meat, but it tastes more like gristle and fat, with a hint of something that might have been an animal once. You eat it anyway, because you're hungry, and you don't have any other options. You wash it down with some water from a public fountain, which is risky because the water quality is questionable, but you're thirsty, and you're willing to take the chance. You're sitting on a low wall trying to give your feet a rest, when a group of youngsters runs past, laughing and shouting. One of them points at you and yells something that you can't quite make out, but it's definitely not complimentary. The others laugh, and they all run off down the street. You're too tired to care. Let them laugh. You're the one getting paid. A woman approaches you, hesitant and nervous. She asks if you can come see her husband, who's been sick for days. You nod and follow her to a small house nearby. The husband is in bad shape, feverish and weak, and the woman is clearly terrified. You do what you can, which isn't much. You give her some herbs, you tell her to keep him cool and hydrated, and you take a reduced fee because she clearly doesn't have much money. She thanks you with tears in her eyes, and you leave feeling like a fraud. The afternoon is brutal. The sun is high and hot, and your coat is like a portable furnace. Sweat is running down your back in rivers, pooling at the base of your spine and soaking into your trousers. Your shirt is stuck to your chest, and every movement makes the fabric rub and chafe. The rash under your arms is worse today, and it burns every time you lift your arms. You're trying to walk with your arms slightly away from your body to minimize the friction, which makes you look like a penguin, but you don't care anymore. The next house is up a hill, which is exactly what you didn't want to hear. Your legs are already trembling with exhaustion, and the thought of climbing a hill in this heat, in this coat, makes you want to sit down and cry. But you don't have a choice. The patient is waiting, and you need the money. So you start climbing. Every step is agony. Your boots are rubbing against the blisters with every movement, and the pain is sharp and constant. Your calves are burning, your thighs are shaking, and your lungs are screaming for air. but the mask makes it impossible to take a deep breath, so you're just gasping and wheezing like an asthmatic tortoise. Sweat is pouring down your face, stinging your eyes, and you can't wipe it away because your hands are trapped in those ridiculous gloves. Halfway up the hill, you have to stop. You're dizzy, nauseous, and your heart is pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. You lean against a wall, trying to catch your breath, and a passing cart driver gives you a concerned look. You wave him away with your stick, trying to indicate that you're fine, even though you're clearly not. You stand there for a few minutes, gulping down hot, herb-scented air, and then you force yourself to keep going. You finally reach the house at the top of the hill, and you're so exhausted you can barely lift your hand to knock. A grown man opens the door, takes one look at you and asks if you're all right. You nod, which is a lie, and he lets you inside. The patient is a grown woman with a fever and a nasty rash across her chest and arms. You examine her as best you can, recommend a poultice and some herbal tea, and collect your fee. The whole visit takes maybe 10 minutes, and then you're back outside, facing the prospect of walking back down the hill. Going down is almost worse than going up. Your legs are so tired that they're not responding properly, and you have to concentrate hard to make sure you don't trip and tumble all the way to the bottom. The coat is heavy and awkward, and it keeps threatening to pull you forward. You take it slow, one step at a time, gripping your stick for balance. By the time you reach level ground again, your knees are aching and your thighs are burning. 2 more patients to go. You can do this. You repeat it to yourself like a mantra as you trudge through the streets. 2 more patients, 2 more fees. Then you can go home, take off this nightmare outfit, and collapse. The thought keeps you moving. The next house is mercifully close and on flat ground. The patient is a grown man with stomach cramps and general exhaustion. You give him the standard advice and move on. 1 more to go. The final patient of the day lives on the far side of town, which means another long walk. Your feet have gone past pain and into a kind of numb, throbbing state. Every step feels like you're walking on hot coals, but in a distant, disconnected way, as if it's happening to someone else. Your mind is foggy from heat and exhaustion, and you're basically moving on autopilot now. You pass a public well where people are gathered to collect water and gossip. A few of them glance at you as you walk past, and you hear snippets of conversation. Someone mentions the plague. Someone else talks about a neighbor who died last week. The fear is always there, hanging over the city like a dark cloud. You're part of that fear now. You're the person they call when things get bad, and seeing you on the street is a reminder that things are bad. You finally reach the last house of the day, and it's a relief so profound that you almost laugh. The patient is a grown man with a mild cough and some aches. Nothing serious. You prescribe rest and herbs, collect your fee, and leave. Done. The day is over. The walk home feels longer than usual. The streets are starting to empty as people head inside for the evening. The sun is low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. You're moving slowly now, limping slightly, your shoulders hunched under the weight of the coat. Every part of your body hurts. Your feet, your legs, your back, your neck, your shoulders. Even your fingers ache from gripping the stick all day. You finally reach your lodgings and climb the stairs, which feels like scaling a mountain. You reach your door, push it open, and step inside. The room is warm from the bakery ovens below, but you're too tired to care. You drop your stick on the floor and immediately start removing the plague doctor gear. The gloves come off, and your hands are pale and wrinkled. The coat comes off and you feel like you've shed 100 pounds. The mask comes off last, and the rush of cool air on your face is glorious. You drop everything in a heap on the floor and just stand there for a moment, breathing. Your hair is soaked with sweat, your face is red and puffy, and you've got deep grooves across your nose and cheeks where the mask was pressing down. You pour water over your face and neck, not caring that it's splashing onto the floor. You drink deeply, feeling the cool water soothe your parched throat. You peel off your shirt and trousers, which are both soaked through, and you stand there in your underclothes, letting the air dry the sweat on your skin. Dinner is waiting, another bowl of pottage, another chunk of bread. You eat mechanically, barely tasting it. Your jaw is too tired to chew properly, so you just swallow the food in lumps and hope your stomach can deal with it. You finish the meal and set the bowl aside, and then you collapse onto the bed. The straw mattress crackles under your weight, and something sharp pokes you in the back, but you don't have the energy to adjust. You just lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Your feet are throbbing, your back is aching, and your whole body feels like it's been beaten with sticks. But you made it through another day. Just as you're about to drift off, you feel the familiar itch of a flea bite on your ankle, then another on your arm, then another on your neck. The bed is alive with them tonight, and they're feasting on you. You slap at them half-heartedly, but there are too many, and you're too tired to fight. You just lie there, letting them bite you, and eventually you fall into a fitful, uncomfortable sleep. You dream about walking again. Endless streets, endless patience, endless suffering. You dream about the mask, suffocating and heavy. You dream about climbing hills that never end and stumbling through markets that go on forever. You wake up several times during the night, confused and disoriented, and each time you remember where you are and what you have to do tomorrow, and a wave of exhaustion and dread washes over you. Morning comes, as it always does. The noise from the street wakes you, and you lie there for a moment, trying to convince yourself to get up. Your body is screaming at you to stay in bed, but you can't. You've got patients to see, fees to collect, rent to pay. So you drag yourself upright, wincing at the pain in your feet and back, and you look at the pile of plague doctor gear on the floor. You head out into the streets again, and it's like stepping into a nightmare that never ends. The same narrow alleys, the same crowds, the same overwhelming smell of horse droppings and rotting vegetables. Your feet are screaming at you before you've even walked 100 paces, and the blisters that you thought couldn't possibly get worse have somehow found a way. Every step sends a jolt of pain up your legs, and you're already limping by the time you reach your first appointment of the day. The first patient is a grown man who looks like he hasn't slept in a week. His eyes are sunken, his skin is grey, and he's shivering despite the warmth of the room. You go through your routine, poking him gently with your stick, asking questions that he answers in a weak, raspy voice. You prescribe herbs, rest, and prayer, and you collect your fee. It's also familiar now that you could do it in your sleep, which is good because you're basically asleep on your feet. As you leave the house, you're hit by a wave of dizziness. The heat, the lack of food, the exhaustion, it's all catching up with you. You lean against a wall for a moment, trying to steady yourself, and you take shallow breaths through your mask. The herbs inside smell stronger than usual today, or maybe you're just more aware of them because your senses are heightened by fatigue. Either way, it's unpleasant. You force yourself to keep moving. The second patient of the day is across town, which means another long walk through the maze of streets. You're trying to take shortcuts, but every shortcut seems to lead you down an even narrower, smellier alley. You pass a tannery, and the stench of animal hides being processed makes your eyes water even through the mask. You pass a ditch full of stagnant water that's buzzing with flies. You pass a group of men loading a cart with barrels, and one of them nearly backs into you with a barrel on his shoulder. You dodge out of the way, stumble, and nearly fall into a pile of refuse. The streets are busier than usual today, which makes navigating even more difficult. There's some kind of gathering happening in the market square, maybe a festival, maybe a public announcement, you're not sure. All you know is that there are people everywhere, and they're all in your way. You're trying to push through the crowd with your stick, but people are packed in so tightly that there's barely room to move. Someone steps on your foot right on top of a blister, and you let out a muffled yelp of pain. No one notices. You finally break free of the crowd and find yourself in a quieter area. Your coat is soaked with sweat again, and the fabric is sticking to your back in uncomfortable ways. Your shirt underneath is completely drenched, and it's chafing against your skin with every movement. The rash under your arms has spread to your sides, and it's burning and itching at the same time. You want to scratch it so badly, but your hands are trapped in gloves and your coat is buttoned up, so you just have to suffer. The second patient is another grown woman with a fever. She's lying in bed, surrounded by worried family members, who all start talking to you at once. You hold up your stick to quiet them, and you conduct your examination in silence. The woman is weak but conscious, and she manages to describe her symptoms in a faint voice. You nod along, making sympathetic noises, and you prescribe the usual remedies. You're starting to feel like a broken record, repeating the same advice over and over again. Herbs, rest, prayer, balance the humours, avoid bad air. It's all you've got. You collect your fee and leave, and as you're walking down the stairs you feel something crawling on your neck. You slap at it with your gloved hand, which is about as effective as swatting a fly with a pillow. Whatever it was, it's gone now. Or maybe it's just moved to a different part of your body. You're constantly itchy these days. Between the fleas, the sweat, the chafing and the rashes, there's always something bothering you. The third patient is back near the market, which means you have to navigate through the crowd again. This time you take a different route, going around the edge of the square instead of through the middle. It's longer, but it's less crowded, and right now you'll take any route that involves fewer people. You're so tired that your vision is starting to blur, and you're seeing double occasionally. You have to stop and blink hard to clear your eyes, and you wonder if you're getting sick yourself. That would be ironic. The plague doctor catches the plague. You'd laugh if you had the energy. You reach the house and knock, and a grown man lets you in. The patient is his brother, and he's in rough shape. High fever, terrible cough, barely able to sit up. You examine him as best you can, but you already know there's not much you can do. Medieval medicine doesn't have answers for this level of illness. You prescribe your usual remedies, but even as you're saying the words, you can see the despair in the family's eyes. They know it's not enough. You know it's not enough. But you go through the motions anyway, because what else can you do? You leave the house feeling heavy and hopeless. This is the worst part of the job, not the physical discomfort, not the heat or the smells or the exhaustion, but the knowledge that you're essentially useless. You're a symbol, a ritual, a comforting presence, but you're not actually helping anyone. People pay you because they're desperate and they need to feel like they're doing something, but the truth is that most of your patients are going to get better or worse regardless of what you do. Your herbs and your advice and your fancy bird mask don't change the outcome. You shake off the dark thoughts and keep walking. You've got more patients to see, and wallowing in self-pity isn't going to help anyone. The fourth patient is a short walk away, and it's another grown man with a fever and aches. You prescribe herbs, collect your fee, and move on. The fifth patient is a grown woman with a nasty cough. Herbs, Fee, move on. The 6th patient is a grown man with stomach cramps. Herbs, Fee, move on. You're a machine now, running on fumes, going through the motions without thinking. Lunchtime comes and goes and you forget to eat. You're so focused on just getting through the day that you don't even notice the hunger until mid-afternoon, when your stomach starts cramping. You find a vendor selling roasted chestnuts, and you buy a small bag with some of your morning's earnings. The chestnuts are hot and slightly burnt, and they taste like charcoal, but you eat them anyway. They sit heavy in your stomach, and you feel slightly nauseous afterwards, but at least you've got some food in you. You're standing in the middle of a street, munching on burnt chestnuts and trying to remember where your next patient lives, when a cart rumbles past and splashes through a puddle. Dirty water sprays up and hits you in the side, soaking your coat and splattering your mask. The cart driver doesn't even notice. You just stand there, dripping, and you feel the cold, filthy water seeping through your coat and into your shirt. It smells like old vegetables and something worse, and you can feel it running down your side in a slow, disgusting trickle. You don't have time to go home and change, even if you had spare clothes, which you don't. So you just keep walking, now wet as well as hot and exhausted. The wet patch on your coat starts to smell even worse as it warms up from your body heat. And now you're not only uncomfortable, you're also giving off an odour that makes people give you an even wider berth than usual. The 7th patient is up another hill, because apparently the universe hates you. You climb slowly, your legs shaking with every step, your breath coming in short, desperate gasps. The inside of your mask is so humid now that you feel like you're drowning. Every inhale is a struggle, and every exhale just makes things worse. You reach the top of the hill and have to stop again, leaning against a wall, your head spinning and your heart pounding. You wake up in the middle of the night, and for a moment you don't know where you are. The room is pitch black, and your body is stiff and aching in ways you didn't think possible. You try to shift position, and every muscle screams in protest. Your neck is locked at an odd angle from falling asleep without moving, and when you try to turn your head, it feels like someone's driving a knife into your spine. You lie there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city at night. Distant voices, the occasional bark of a dog, the creak of the building settling. Your mouth is so dry it feels like you've been chewing sand. You reach for the water jug in the darkness, fumbling around on the small table beside your bed. Your hand knocks into something, and you hear a clatter as whatever it was falls to the floor. You finally find the jug and lift it to your lips, drinking directly from it because you're too tired to bother with a cup. The water is warm and stale, but it soothes your parched throat. Your stomach is gurgling uncomfortably, making strange noises that suggest the burnt chestnuts and the mysterious meat pie from earlier are having some kind of disagreement down there. You feel bloated and queasy at the same time, which shouldn't be possible but somehow is. You lie back down and try to find a comfortable position, but everything hurts. Your feet are throbbing with a deep, persistent ache. Your back feels like someone's been beating it with a club. Your shoulders are tight and knotted from carrying the weight of the coat all day. The fleas are particularly active tonight. You can feel them hopping around on the blanket, exploring your exposed skin, taking little test bites to see if you're awake enough to fight back. You're not. You just lie there and let them feast, too exhausted to care. Each bite is a tiny pinprick of irritation, and by morning you'll be covered in itchy red welts, but right now you can't muster the energy to do anything about it. You drift in and out of an uneasy sleep for the rest of the night. You dream that you're walking through streets that never end, wearing a mask that's getting tighter and tighter until you can't breathe. You dream that you're climbing an endless hill, your legs getting heavier with every step until you can't move at all. You dream that patients are grabbing at you with desperate hands, pulling at your coat, begging for help that you can't give. Morning arrives with the usual cacophony of noise from the street below. Cartwheels, shouting vendors, the clang of metal on metal from a blacksmith somewhere nearby. You open your eyes and immediately regret it. The dim light filtering through the gaps in the walls feels like needles stabbing into your skull. You've got a pounding headache that sits right behind your eyes, the kind that makes you want to just pull the blanket over your head and stay in bed forever. But you can't. You've got patients waiting, and rent is due at the end of the week. You drag yourself upright, moving like someone 3 times your age. Your feet hit the floor, and the pain from the blisters makes you gasp. The scabs that formed overnight crack and split as you put weight on them, and you can feel fresh dampness inside your socks that suggests they're weeping again. You hobble over to the water jug and splash your face, trying to wake yourself up properly. Your reflection in the small, warped piece of polished metal that serves as a mirror is not encouraging. Your face is pale and drawn, with dark circles under your eyes that look like bruises. There are red marks across your nose and cheeks where the mask sits, and they've turned into permanent grooves now, like someone's carved them into your skin. Your hair is sticking up at odd angles, matted with sweat and dirt. You look like someone who's been through a war, and in a way, you have been. The plague doctor gear is still in a heap on the floor where you dropped it last night. The coat is crumpled and damp in patches, the gloves are lying like dead things, and the mask is staring at you with its empty eye holes. You pick up the shirt you were wearing yesterday, give it a sniff, and immediately regret it. It smells like something died in it, but it's the only shirt you've got that's not currently being worn, so you pull it on anyway. The fabric is crusty in places and sticks to your skin uncomfortably. The trousers are just as bad. They're stiff with dried sweat and mud, and when you pull them on, they chafe against your legs like sandpaper. You sit down on the edge of the bed to put on your boots, and you have to psych yourself up for it. You know it's going to hurt. You ease your feet in as gently as possible, but there's no gentle way to do it. The leather presses against the raw blisters, and you have to clench your teeth to keep from crying out. You lace the boots up with shaking hands, and then you just sit there for a moment, breathing through the pain. The coat goes on next, heavy and oppressive as always. Today it feels even heavier, like it's gained weight overnight. Your shoulders sag under the burden, and you haven't even left the room yet. The gloves slide on, damp and cold, and your hands disappear into their leather prison. Finally, the mask. You strap it on, and the world narrows down to 2 tiny circles of light. The herbs inside smell musty and old, like they've given up trying to be pleasant and have just accepted their fate as rotting plant matter. You grab your stick and head down the stairs, moving carefully because your legs are wobbly and unreliable this morning. The bakery below is already hard at work, and the smell of fresh bread fills the stairwell. Your stomach growls loudly, reminding you that you barely ate yesterday. But bread costs money, and you need to save what you've got for rent, so you ignore the delicious smell and step out into the street. The morning air is cool and damp, and there's a mist hanging over the city that makes everything look grey and ghostly. The streets are quieter than usual at this hour, and you take advantage of the relative calm to make your way to your first appointment. Your feet are agony with every step, and you're already limping noticeably. An old woman sweeping her doorstep watches you hobble past and shakes her head sadly, probably thinking you've caught some terrible disease. You want to tell her that it's just blisters, but the mask makes conversation impossible, so you just keep walking. The first patient of the day lives in a particularly run-down part of town, where the buildings lean at dangerous angles and the streets are more mud than cobblestone. The house is little more than a shack, with walls made of wattle and daub that are crumbling in places. You knock with your stick, and a grown man answers, thin, tired-looking, with hands that are rough and calloused from manual labour. He leads you inside without speaking, and you have to duck your head to get through the low doorway. The interior is dim and smoky, with a small fire burning in a crude hearth. The patient is lying on a pile of straw in the corner, covered with a ragged blanket that's more holes than fabric. It's a grown woman, probably younger than she looks, aged prematurely by hard work and harder living. She's shivering despite the warmth from the fire, and her face is slick with sweat. You approach carefully, mindful of the low ceiling beams, and begin your examination. She's in bad shape. Her breathing is laboured and raspy, and when you ask her to describe her symptoms, her voice is so weak you can barely hear her. Fever, chills, terrible ache in her bones, exhaustion so profound she can barely lift her head. You've seen these symptoms before, many times, and they never lead anywhere good. You prescribe your usual remedies, but your heart isn't in it. You can see in the man's eyes that he knows you're just going through the motions. The second patient lives above a tavern, which means you have to navigate through the common room to reach the stairs. It's mid-morning, but there are already a handful of men sitting at tables, drinking ale and eating bowls of something that might be porridge. They all stop and stare as you walk in, and the room goes quiet. There's something unsettling about the way they look at you. Not quite hostile, but not friendly either. You're a reminder of disease and death, and people don't like being reminded. You head for the stairs at the back of the room, and as you pass one of the tables, a drunk man reaches out and grabs at your coat. He's slurring something about his brother, about how you came to see him last week and he died anyway, about how you're a fraud and a charlatan. You pull away gently but firmly, and the tavern keeper comes over and shoos the man back to his seat. The keeper apologizes, but you can see in his eyes that he's not entirely unsympathetic to the drunk man's complaints. You climb the narrow stairs to the upper floor, which is a maze of small rooms rented out to whoever can afford them. The patient is in a corner room, lying on a straw mattress that smells like it's been there since the beginning of time. It's a grown man, middle-aged, with a beard that's matted and unkempt. He's got a fever and a cough that sounds like gravel rattling in a bucket. His wife is there, a tired woman with lines around her eyes, and she watches anxiously as you examine him. You go through your routine, checking for swellings, asking about symptoms, nodding sagely as if you're processing important medical information. In reality, you're just going through the motions, because you've seen this same presentation a dozen times already this week. You prescribe willow bark for the fever, honey for the cough, and rest for everything else. The wife pays you with a handful of small coins, counting them out carefully from a cloth purse. You can tell it's probably all she has, but business is business. As you're leaving, you hear the man start coughing again, a deep, wet sound that makes your skin crawl. The wife calls after you, asking if he's going to be all right, and you give her a vague, non-committal answer because you genuinely don't know. Medieval medicine is essentially advanced guessing, and sometimes people get better, and sometimes they don't, and there's not much you can do to influence the outcome. Back down through the tavern, where the drunk man has passed out with his head on the table, and out into the street. The sun is higher now, and it's getting warmer by the minute. You can feel sweat starting to pool in the small of your back, and your shirt is beginning to stick to your skin. The day is still young, and you're already exhausted. The third patient is a good walk away, across town near the river. The route takes you past the fish market, which is exactly as pleasant as it sounds. The smell hits you from 3 streets away. Rotting fish, seaweed, and the particular stench of fish guts baking in the sun. Even with your herb-stuffed mask, it's overwhelming. Your eyes water, and you have to breathe through your mouth, which means you're tasting it instead of smelling it. It's like licking the bottom of a fishing boat. The market itself is chaos. Fishmongers are shouting their wares, holding up specimens that range from questionable to actively decomposing. Seagulls are everywhere, screaming and fighting over scraps. The ground is slick with fish scales and mysterious slime, and you have to pick your way carefully to avoid slipping. A gull swoops down right in front of you, making you jump, and your foot slides on something wet. You catch yourself with your stick, but not before your boot squelches into something soft and putrid. You escape the fish market and head towards the river, where the air is marginally fresher. The patient lives in a house right on the waterfront, which sounds nicer than it is. The river is basically an open sewer, and the smell of stagnant water and human waste is thick enough to cut with a knife. You knock on the door and are let in by a grown man who looks like he works on the docks, muscular, weathered, with hands like slabs of meat. The patient is his father, an old man who's seen too many hard years. He's lying in bed, wheezing and struggling to breathe, and there's a blue tinge to his lips that suggests his lungs aren't working properly. You examine him as best you can, but it's obvious that he's failing. You prescribe some herbs to help with the breathing, but you know it's not going to make much difference. The son knows it too. He pays you in silence, his jaw tight, and you leave without saying much. Walking back through the riverside area, you pass a group of washerwomen doing laundry in the river. They're standing knee-deep in the filthy water, scrubbing clothes against rocks and singing to pass the time. You marvel at their ability to put their hands in water that you wouldn't even want to look at, let alone touch. One of them calls out something to you as you pass, but you can't make out what she's saying through your mask. The others laugh, and you keep walking. The fourth patient is back in the central part of town, which means retracing your steps and walking for another 20 minutes. Your feet are screaming at you now, and each step is a conscious effort. The blisters have broken open properly, and you can feel dampness inside your boots that might be sweat, might be the fluid from the blisters, or might be a combination of both. Either way, it's disgusting and painful. You're crossing through a small square when you see a commotion ahead. A crowd has gathered around something and people are shouting. You try to give it a wide berth, but the square is small and you have to pass relatively close. As you get nearer, you see what they're looking at. A body, covered with a sheet, lying in the middle of the square. Someone's died, probably from plague, and they've left the body here until the cart comes to collect it. People are keeping their distance, crossing themselves, muttering prayers. You hurry past as quickly as your aching feet will allow. Death is everywhere in this city, a constant presence that you can never quite escape. You're supposed to be fighting it, but mostly you just feel like you're documenting it, watching it happen, powerless to stop it. The weight of that knowledge sits heavy on your shoulders, heavier even than the coat. The fourth patient turns out to be relatively straightforward. A grown woman with a headache and some dizziness, nothing serious. You recommend rest and a herbal infusion, collect your fee, and move on. Sometimes you get lucky and the patient isn't actually very sick, and those visits are a welcome relief from the heavier cases. But the fifth patient brings you right back down to earth. It's a grown man, probably in his late 20s, lying in a dark room that smells like sickness and despair. He's covered in a rash that looks angry and inflamed, and his fever is so high that he's delirious, muttering nonsense about ships and horses and his mother. His wife is there, heavily pregnant and terrified, and she keeps asking if her husband is going to die. You can't give her the reassurance she wants because you honestly don't know. You prescribe a poultice for the rash and herbs for the fever, and you tell her to keep him cool and hydrated. It's all you can do. She pays you with shaking hands, and you can see tears running down her face as you leave. You walk down the stairs feeling like the worst person in the world, knowing that you've taken money from a desperate woman and given her nothing but vague hope in return. Lunchtime has come and gone again, and you've forgotten to eat. Your stomach is cramping with hunger, but finding time to stop and eat feels impossible. You're already behind schedule, and you've still got 3 more patients to see. You decide to push through and eat when you get home, assuming you're still conscious by then. The 7th patient lives in a house that's seen better days, with a roof that's partially caved in and covered with a makeshift tarp. You knock with your stick while juggling the chicken, which has started squawking again. A grown woman answers, looks at you, looks at the chicken and doesn't even ask. She just lets you in with a resigned expression that suggests she's past the point of being surprised by anything. You set the chicken down in a corner, where it immediately starts exploring and pecking at the dirt floor. The patient is the woman's husband, lying on a bed that's sagging dangerously in the middle. He's a large man, probably a labourer of some kind, with arms like tree trunks and hands that are scarred and calloused. But right now he looks small and fragile, curled up under a thin blanket, shivering despite the warmth of the room. He's got the usual symptoms: fever, aches, exhaustion. But there's something else. His breathing is laboured, and there's a wheeze in his chest that you don't like the sound of. You listen carefully, pressing your ear close to his chest and trying to hear through the muffling effect of your mask. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a windstorm, but you catch enough to know that his lungs are struggling. You prescribe a steam treatment, which involves boiling water with herbs and having him breathe in the vapour. It might help loosen whatever's in his chest, or it might do nothing, but it's better than just standing there shrugging. You also recommend a mustard plaster for his chest, which will probably burn like fire but might help with the congestion. The wife nods and takes notes mentally because paper and ink are luxuries that people like her can't afford. When you go to leave, you realise you've forgotten about the chicken. It's wandered into another corner and is now pecking industriously at something on the floor. You have to chase it down, which is not easy in a long coat and heavy boots. The chicken evades you twice, squawking indignantly, before you finally manage to grab it. The wife watches this entire performance without comment, which you appreciate. Back out into the street, chicken under arm, dignity nowhere to be found. You're so tired now that you're seeing spots at the edges of your vision. Your head feels light and disconnected from your body, like you're floating slightly above yourself. You know these are signs that you're pushing too hard, that you need to rest and eat and drink water, but you've still got 1 more patient to see, and you're not going to stop now. The 8th and final patient of the day is thankfully nearby. The house is small but well kept, with flowers in a window box, and a door that's been recently painted. A grown man answers, clean, well dressed by local standards, with an air of minor prosperity. He looks at your chicken and raises an eyebrow but doesn't comment. You follow him inside, leaving the chicken by the door because you're not carrying it around anymore. The patient is his mother, an elderly woman sitting up in bed with pillows propped behind her. She's alert and sharp-eyed, and she watches you with the kind of shrewd intelligence that makes you nervous. You get the feeling she's going to be a difficult patient, the kind who asks questions you can't answer, and sees right through your confident facade. She describes her symptoms in precise detail: a pain in her joints that's worse in the morning, stiffness in her hands, occasional dizziness when she stands up too quickly. These aren't plague symptoms. These are just the symptoms of being old and having a body that's starting to wear out. But she's paid for a plague doctor, so you go through your examination anyway. You prescribe a warming ointment for the joint pain, made from oil and herbs. You suggest gentle movement and stretching, which makes her snort derisively because apparently you're not the first person to give her that advice. You recommend a tonic made from apple cider vinegar and honey, which is supposed to help with general health and vigour. She listens to all of this with a sceptical expression, and when you're done, she asks pointed questions about why these remedies will work when all the others she's tried haven't. You give her your best medical-sounding nonsense about balancing humours and promoting circulation and ensuring vital energies flow properly. She doesn't look convinced, but her son pays you with good silver coins and thanks you for coming. As you're leaving, the old woman calls after you and tells you to take care of yourself, that you look terrible and you're going to collapse if you keep working like this. You want to tell her that she's absolutely right, but you just nod and leave. You collect your chicken, which has somehow gotten loose and is now in the middle of the street, and you start the long walk home. Every step is torture. Your feet have gone past pain and into a kind of numb agony where you can't feel individual blisters anymore, just a constant throbbing burn. Your legs are shaking, your back is screaming, and your shoulders feel like they've been beaten with hammers. The streets are starting to empty as evening approaches. Vendors are packing up their stalls, people are heading home, and the city is transitioning from day to night. The quality of the light is changing, becoming golden and soft, and long shadows stretch across the cobblestones. Under different circumstances, it might be beautiful. Right now, you're too tired to care. You're walking past a public fountain when you decide you need to stop and drink. You set the chicken down. It's given up squawking and has accepted its fate, and you approach the fountain. The water is flowing from a carved stone spout into a basin below, and several people are filling jugs and buckets. You wait your turn, leaning heavily on your stick, and when space clears, you lean forward and drink directly from the spout. The water is cool and clean, and it's the best thing you've tasted all day. You drink deeply, feeling it soothe your parched throat and settle your cramping stomach. Water runs down your chin and drips onto your coat, but you don't care. You straighten up, wiping your mouth with the back of your glove, and you feel marginally more human. A young boy approaches the fountain with a bucket, and he stops and stares at you. You're used to this reaction by now. The plague doctor outfit tends to fascinate and terrify in equal measure. The boy edges around you carefully, keeping his distance, and fills his bucket while sneaking glances at your mask. You give him a little wave with your stick, which makes him jump and hurry away with his sloshing bucket. You pick up your chicken and continue home. Your lodgings finally come into view, and you've never been so happy to see the crooked building with its bakery ground floor. You climb the stairs slowly, your legs barely functioning, and you have to stop halfway up to catch your breath. The chicken is surprisingly heavy, or maybe you're just incredibly weak right now. Either way, it feels like you're carrying a boulder. You reach your door and fumble with the latch, your gloved fingers clumsy and uncooperative. You finally get it open and stumble inside, dropping the chicken immediately. It flaps and squawks and settles in a corner, eyeing you warily. You'll deal with it later. Right now, you need to get out of this coat before you pass out. The gloves come off first, and your hands are wrinkled and pale. The coat comes off next, and the relief is so profound you actually groan out loud. The mask comes off last, and you gasp in deep breaths of relatively fresh air. Your face is soaked with sweat. Your hair is plastered to your head, and there are deep red grooves where the mask was pressing down. You pour water over your face and neck, not caring that it's splashing everywhere. You drink directly from the jug, gulping down water until your stomach sloshes. Then you collapse onto the bed, Still mostly dressed and just lie there staring at the ceiling, you wake again to the sound of the chicken crowing enthusiastically right next to your head. It's decided that sunrise is a good time to announce its presence to the world, and your small room provides excellent acoustics for this purpose. The noise feels like an axe splitting your skull, and you seriously consider turning the chicken into dinner right now, except you're too tired to figure out how to kill and pluck it. You drag yourself out of bed, and your body protests with every movement. Your feet are still agony, your back has stiffened overnight into a solid board, and your neck only turns in one direction. You hobble over to the water jug, drink deeply, and splash some on your face. The chicken watches you with beady eyes, tilting its head sideways in that unsettling way chickens do. You need to decide what to do with the bird. You could keep it for eggs, but that would mean feeding it and dealing with the mess. And you barely have energy to feed yourself. You could sell it at the market, but carrying it there and haggling over price sounds exhausting. You could eat it, which would involve killing, plucking, gutting and cooking, a multi-hour operation that you don't have time for. So for now, the chicken stays in the corner, pecking at invisible things and making judgmental noises. Getting dressed is the usual misery. The same clothes, now even stiffer and more rank than before. The same boots which you have to psych yourself up to put on. The same coat, heavy and oppressive. The same gloves, damp and cold. The same mask with its suffocating herb stench and tiny eye holes. You're like a knight putting on armour before battle, except your armour is made of leather and herbs, and your battle is against disease, ignorance, and your own failing body. You step out into the morning, leaving the chicken locked in your room where it immediately starts squawking its displeasure. The streets are busy already, and you join the flow of people heading into the city centre. Your first patient of the day lives near the market, which means navigating through the morning chaos of vendors setting up stalls and early shoppers looking for the best produce. You're walking past a stall selling vegetables when you notice something's wrong. Your vision is blurry around the edges, and there's a strange ringing in your ears that has nothing to do with church bells. Your head feels light, disconnected, and your legs are wobbly beneath you. You recognize these symptoms. You're exhausted, dehydrated, and probably haven't eaten properly in days. You're running on empty, and your body is starting to shut down. You lean against a wall trying to steady yourself. The vendor at the nearby stall gives you a concerned look and asks if you're all right. You wave him off with your stick, trying to project confidence you don't feel. After a moment, the dizziness passes, and you push away from the wall and continue walking. You just need to get through today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. The first patient is a grown man with a nasty cough and fever. You go through your routine mechanically, barely hearing his answers to your questions. Your mind is foggy, and you have to concentrate hard to remember what you're supposed to be doing. You prescribe herbs, collect your fee, and leave. The man's wife follows you to the door, asking anxiously if her husband will recover. You give her a vague answer because you honestly weren't paying enough attention to form an opinion. The second patient is a disaster. It's a grown woman who's clearly on death's door, grey skin, laboured breathing, barely conscious. Her family is desperate, begging you to do something to save her. But there's nothing you can do. Medieval medicine has no answer for this level of illness. You go through the motions anyway, prescribing herbs and poultices that you know won't help, taking their money while hating yourself for it. As you're leaving, the woman's daughter grabs your arm, her fingers digging in through the leather coat. She's crying, begging you to stay, to try something else, anything. You gently remove her hand and tell her you'll pray for her mother, which is the only honest thing you can offer. You leave with her sobs following you down the street. You need to eat something. Your stomach is cramping so badly that you can barely stand upright, and the dizziness is getting worse. You find a vendor selling hot pies and buy one with shaking hands. The pie is greasy and the filling is mystery meat, but you eat it standing right there in the street, shoving it into your mouth under the cover of your mask. It's undignified and awkward, but you're past caring about dignity. The food helps marginally. The cramping eases and your head clears slightly. But you're still exhausted, still in pain, still wondering how much longer you can keep doing this. You've got 6 more patients to see today, and the thought of 6 more houses, 6 more examinations, 6 more walks through these filthy streets makes you want to sit down and cry. The 3rd patient is in a house you visited before, a few weeks ago. Back then it was the father who was sick. Now it's the mother. You examine her with a growing sense of hopelessness, knowing that you couldn't save the father and probably won't be able to save the mother either. You prescribe your herbs and collect a reduced fee because the family is already struggling after losing their primary breadwinner. The 4th patient is unusual, a grown man who's not actually sick but wants you to examine him anyway because he's convinced he's about to fall ill. He's anxious and jittery, constantly checking himself for symptoms, feeling his forehead for fever, examining his skin for rashes. You recognize the signs of someone who's been living with plague fear for too long, and it's driven him slightly mad. You examine him thoroughly to ease his mind, checking everything twice, and then you tell him he's healthy. He doesn't believe you. He's convinced there's something you've missed, some hidden symptom that will suddenly manifest and kill him. You spend an extra 20 minutes reassuring him, explaining in detail why he's fine, before he finally lets you leave. He pays you double, probably in the hope that the extra money will make you more thorough next time. Walking to the 5th patient, you pass a group of men loading a cart with bodies wrapped in sheets. The death cart. It comes through each neighborhood every few days, collecting those who've died and taking them to mass graves outside the city. You've seen it before, many times, but it never gets easier. The men loading the bodies work with grim efficiency, their faces wrapped in cloth, their movements mechanical. They've learned not to think too much about what they're doing. One of the bodies slips as they're loading it, and an arm flops out from under the sheet. The men curse and rewrap it quickly, but not before you catch a glimpse of grey skin and stiff fingers. You look away and keep walking, but the image stays with you. The 5th patient is mercifully straightforward. A grown woman with a headache and some stomach trouble. You prescribe ginger tea and rest, collect your fee, and leave. These easy cases are a blessing, brief moments where you can go through the motions without the weight of life and death pressing down on you. But the 6th patient brings you crashing back to reality. It's a grown man, probably in his 30s, covered in swellings that look angry and inflamed. He's in terrible pain, groaning with every breath, and his fever is so high that he's barely conscious. His wife and brother are there, watching you with desperate hope, waiting for you to do something miraculous. You've got nothing. You examine him. You prescribe a poultice that might help with the swelling and herbs that might lower the fever, but you know it's not enough. The brother asks directly if his sibling is going to die, and you can't bring yourself to lie. You tell him it's in higher hands now, which is a diplomatic way of saying yes. They pay you in silence, and you leave feeling like a vulture picking over the dying. The rain has let up slightly by the time you reach the 8th patient, but you're already so wet that it doesn't matter. Your coat is heavy with absorbed water, making it feel like you're wearing a suit of lead. Every step squelches, and you're leaving wet footprints wherever you walk. The mask's herbs have gotten damp and are releasing a particularly pungent smell, like a soggy bouquet left in a vase for too long. This final patient of the day turns out to be a false alarm. It's a grown man who thought he had plague symptoms, but actually just ate something that disagreed with him. He's embarrassed and apologetic, but he still pays you, so you're not complaining. You conduct a brief examination just to be thorough, declare him free of plague, and head for home. The walk back is torture. The rain has stopped, but now the sun is coming out, and steam is rising from the wet streets. The humidity is suffocating, and inside your damp leather coat you feel like you're being steamed alive. The wet fabric is chafing against your skin in new and creative ways, and you've got raw patches on your shoulders, under your arms, and around your waist where the coat has been rubbing. You're almost home when you slip on a wet cobblestone. Your feet go out from under you, and you land hard on your backside in the middle of the street. The impact jolts through your spine, and you sit there for a moment, stunned and aching, while people walk past and pretend not to notice. Your stick has gone flying, and you have to crawl over to retrieve it, your coat dragging through the mud. Getting back to your feet takes 3 attempts. Your legs don't want to cooperate, and the weight of the wet coat keeps pulling you backwards. Finally, you manage to stand, and you limp the rest of the way home, covered in mud, soaked to the bone, and so exhausted you're seeing double. You climb the stairs to your room, leaving a trail of mud and water behind you. The chicken starts squawking the moment you open the door, apparently furious at being left alone all day. You ignore it and start stripping off the wet plague doctor gear, peeling away layers of soaked leather and fabric. The coat hits the floor with a wet slap, and water spreads out in a puddle around it. The gloves come off, and your hands are wrinkled like prunes, pale and waterlogged. The mask comes off, and your face is red and raw from being trapped in damp leather all day. You stand there in your soaked underclothes, shivering despite the warmth of the room, and survey the disaster that is your life. Your clothes need to dry, but there's nowhere to hang them properly. You drape the coat over the back of the single chair, but it's so heavy that the chair tips backwards and crashes to the floor. You leave it there. You hang the gloves on a nail in the wall. The mask goes on the table, where it sits staring at you accusingly with its empty eye holes. You need to change into dry clothes, but you don't have any. Everything you own is either currently wet or already filthy from previous wearing. You stand there, dripping and miserable, trying to decide between putting on dirty dry clothes or staying in wet, relatively less dirty clothes. You eventually opt for dirty and dry, pulling on a shirt that's crusty with old sweat and trousers that could probably stand up on their own. Dinner tonight is the same as every night, cold pottage and stale bread. You eat it mechanically, too tired to taste it and wash it down with water. The chicken watches you eat with interest, probably hoping for scraps. You toss it a piece of bread, which it pecks at enthusiastically. You should deal with the chicken situation. You should figure out proper accommodation for it, or sell it, or cook it. But instead, you just leave it in the corner and collapse onto the bed. The straw mattress is damp from humidity, and it smells musty, but you're too exhausted to care. You close your eyes and sleep takes you immediately. The night is restless. You wake up multiple times, shivering from damp clothes and fever-like chills that might be exhaustion or might be the start of actual illness. Each time you wake, you lie there in the darkness, listening to the chicken's soft clucking and the sounds of the city at night, wondering if tomorrow will be the day you finally can't get out of bed. But morning comes, as it always does, and somehow you do get out of bed. Your body screams in protest, every muscle stiff and aching, but you force yourself upright. The routine begins again. Water on face, dirty clothes on body, boots on feet. Each item of clothing feels heavier than the day before, Each movement requires more effort. The plague doctor gear is still damp from yesterday's rain. The coat is cold and clammy, and putting it on is like wrapping yourself in a wet blanket pulled from a freezing lake. The gloves are stiff and slightly mouldy. The mask smells like damp herbs and despair. But you put it all on anyway, because this is your job. This is how you survive. You head out into another day, leaving the chickens squawking behind you. The streets are busy, the sun is already warm, and your damp coat is beginning to steam as it dries. You look like some kind of swamp creature that's crawled out of the depths, and people give you even wider berth than usual. The first patient is a grown man with all the classic symptoms: fever, aches, exhaustion. You examine him, prescribe herbs, collect your fee. The second patient is a grown woman with a terrible cough. Examine, prescribe, collect. The third patient is a grown man with swellings. Examine, prescribe, collect. The fourth patient is a grown woman with fever. Examine, prescribe, collect. They all blur together now. Different faces, same symptoms, same helpless feeling of going through motions that accomplish nothing. You're not healing anyone. You're not saving anyone. You're just a presence, a ritual, a way for desperate people to feel like they're doing something. Somewhere around midday, you stop keeping track. You're in some house, examining some patient, saying some words. Your body is moving on autopilot, your mouth forming familiar phrases without conscious thought. You're not really there anymore. You're somewhere else, somewhere far away from the smell and the heat and the suffering. You collect your fees mechanically, tucking coins and small goods into your pouch without counting them. Someone gives you a bag of turnips. Someone else gives you a small wheel of cheese. You accept everything without comment, loading yourself down like a pack animal. The afternoon stretches on forever. More patients, more houses, more walking. Your feet have stopped hurting because they've gone completely numb. Your back has stopped aching because you can't feel it anymore. You're beyond pain now, existing in some strange place where your body has disconnected from your mind. You're walking down a street when you realize you don't know where you are. You've been walking on autopilot and you've gotten lost. You stand there, swaying slightly, trying to orient yourself. The street looks familiar but wrong, like you've seen it before but from a different angle. You turn in a circle, looking for landmarks, and the movement makes you dizzy. A woman approaches and asks if you need help. You try to tell her where you're supposed to be going, but the words come out wrong, jumbled and confused. She looks alarmed and asks if you're ill. You shake your head, too vigorously, because the world tilts and spins, and wave her away. After a moment, you recognize a building and remember which way to go. You make it to your last patient through sheer stubbornness. The examination is perfunctory, the prescriptions are automatic, and you barely register collecting your fee. You just want to be done. You want to go home. You want to stop. The walk home is a nightmare. Everything hurts again. The numbness has worn off and been replaced by renewed agony. Your feet are on fire, your legs are trembling, your back is screaming. The bag of turnips keeps banging against your leg with every step. The cheese in your pouch is probably melting from your body heat. You wake up on the floor several hours later, stiff and cold despite the warmth radiating from the bakery below. Your cheek is pressed against the rough wooden boards, and there's drool pooling beneath your face. The chicken is pecking near your head, having apparently decided that your hair might contain food. You swat at it weakly, and it flutters away with an indignant squawk. Getting up is an ordeal that takes several minutes. Your body has seized up completely, every joint locked and protesting. You roll onto your back first, staring at the ceiling beams while gathering the energy to continue. Then you manage to get onto your side, then onto your hands and knees, and finally, using the edge of the table for support, you haul yourself upright. Everything hurts in ways you didn't know were possible. Your feet feel like they've been beaten with hammers. Your legs are so stiff they barely bend. Your back has a sharp, stabbing pain that shoots up your spine whenever you move wrong. Your shoulders are locked in a permanent hunch from carrying the weight of the coat day after day. You're not even 30 years old, but you feel ancient. You look down and realize you're still wearing most of your plague doctor gear. You fell asleep, or passed out, more accurately, before removing it. The coat is still on, the gloves are still on, though one has partially slipped off. Only the mask is off, lying on the floor where it must have fallen when you collapsed. You begin the process of undressing, your movements slow and painful. The realization hits you that you can't keep doing this. Your body is breaking down. Each day takes more out of you than you can recover during the night. You're running a deficit, borrowing energy from reserves that are already depleted. Eventually, probably soon, you're going to collapse completely. And then what? Who takes care of the plague doctor when the plague doctor falls ill? But you can't stop. You need the money. Rent is due, food costs money, and those coins you collect from patients are the only thing standing between you and sleeping in the streets. So you'll get up tomorrow, and you'll put on the coat and the gloves and the mask, and you'll do it all again. Because there's no alternative. You manage to get the coat off and drop it on the floor. Your shirt underneath is soaked with sweat despite the fact that you've been lying unconscious for hours. The fabric has rubbed your shoulders and underarms raw, and when you peel the shirt off, you see patches of red, irritated skin that sting when air hits them. The turnips and cheese have survived your collapse. You set them on the table and cut a piece of cheese with your small knife. It's gone soft and oily from being carried against your body all day. But it's food. You eat it with a chunk of stale bread, chewing mechanically, barely tasting anything. The chicken has made itself at home, apparently accepting that this is its life now. It's found a corner where it's scratched together a nest of sorts from straw that's fallen out of your mattress. You watch it settle down for the night, tucking its head under its wing, and you feel a strange kinship with the bird. Both of you are just trying to survive in circumstances neither of you chose. You pour water over your face and neck, then drink deeply from the jug. The water is warm and tastes like wood, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. You catch sight of your reflection in the small piece of polished metal that serves as a mirror, and you barely recognize yourself. Your face is gaunt, with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. The permanent grooves from the mask have turned into actual indentations in your skin, like someone's carved lines across your face. Your hair is matted and greasy, and there are sores on your scalp from the mask straps. You look like a corpse. You look like one of the patients you visit, wasting away from illness and exhaustion. The irony would be funny if you had the energy to laugh. Sleep is difficult, despite your exhaustion. Your body is so tired it's gone past the point of being able to relax. You lie on the bed, but every position is uncomfortable. Lie on your back and your shoulders ache. Lie on your side and your hip digs into the lumpy mattress. Lie on your stomach and you can't breathe properly. You toss and turn, the straw crackling beneath you, the fleas taking advantage of your restlessness to explore and bite. When you finally do drift off, the dreams are worse than usual. You dream that you're walking through an endless city where every house contains a dying patient. You go from door to door, examining people who are already dead, but don't know it yet. They pay you with coins that turn to ash in your hand. You try to help them, but your herbs have turned to dust and your words come out as meaningless sounds. You wake up gasping, disoriented and terrified, and it takes several moments to remember where you are. The room is dark, the chicken is silent, and somewhere outside a dog is barking. You lie there in the darkness, your heart pounding, and try to convince yourself to go back to sleep. But sleep feels dangerous now, like it might drag you down into dreams you can't escape. Eventually, exhaustion wins over fear, and you drift into a fitful doze. You wake several more times before morning, each time confused and anxious, and each time it's harder to fall back asleep. By the time dawn arrives, you feel like you haven't slept at all. The morning routine is getting harder. Your body is rebelling, refusing to cooperate. Your hands shake as you pour water, making you spill half of it. Your legs threaten to give out when you try to stand. Your vision is blurry and won't quite focus, as if you're looking at the world through dirty glass. The boots are the worst part. The blisters have infected, you're fairly certain. There's a hot, throbbing sensation in your heels that feels different from regular pain. When you peel off your socks, which have stuck to your feet with dried fluid, you see angry red skin surrounding the blisters. But you don't have any other boots, and you can't work barefoot, so you grit your teeth and put them on anyway. The plague doctor gear feels heavier every day, like it's slowly turning into stone. The coat requires 3 attempts to button up, because your fingers won't cooperate. The gloves slide on with difficulty because your hands are swollen. The mask straps take forever to buckle because you can't see what you're doing, and your hands are shaking. You step outside, and the morning sun feels like an assault. It's too bright, too warm, too everything. The street noise is overwhelming. Every voice, every cartwheel, every animal sound feels like it's happening inside your skull. You stand on your doorstep for a long moment, gathering the strength to take the first step. A neighbor passes by and gives you an odd look. You must appear strange, just standing there swaying slightly. Stick in hand, masked face turned towards the sun. They hurry past, crossing themselves, and you don't blame them. You probably look like death itself. You force yourself to start walking. Left foot, right foot, repeat. The rhythm is all you focus on, because thinking about the full day ahead would be too much. Just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. Don't think about the 8 patients you need to see. Don't think about the walking, the examining, the pretending to know what you're doing. Just walk. The first patient is a blur. You go through the motions, but afterwards you can't remember if it was a man or a woman, what symptoms they had, what you prescribed. You collected money. You know that much, because there are coins in your pouch that weren't there before. But the details are gone, lost in the fog that settled over your mind. But as the day continues, more mistakes creep in. You prescribe the wrong herb to a patient, catching your error only when you're already halfway down the street. You have to go back, apologize, correct yourself. The family looks at you with concern and doubt. Can they trust a plague doctor who can't keep his remedies straight? You give another patient advice meant for someone else, telling a man with a cough to apply a poultice for joint pain. He points out the error politely, and you have to backtrack, fumbling through your bag for the right herbs while your face burns with shame beneath the mask. Your navigation is failing too. You take wrong turns, end up in dead-end alleys, have to retrace your steps. The city that you've walked through every day for months has suddenly become a maze. Streets that should be familiar look strange. Buildings seem to have moved. You're constantly disoriented, constantly second-guessing yourself. At one point, you simply can't remember which patient you're supposed to visit next. You stand in the middle of a street, people flowing around you like water around a stone, and you dig through your pouch for your list. But when you find it, the writing looks like meaningless scratches. Are those numbers? Letters? You wrote this yourself, you know you did, but you can't decipher it. A woman stops and asks if you need help. She's middle-aged, with kind eyes and a concerned expression. You try to explain that you're looking for an address, but the words come out garbled. She takes the paper gently from your shaking hands and reads it, then points you in the right direction. She watches you walk away, and you can feel her worried gaze on your back. You make it to the house eventually. The examination is perfunctory, the prescription is automatic, and you leave as quickly as possible. You're aware, in some distant part of your mind, that you're doing a terrible job, that you're not helping these people, that you're barely functional. But acknowledging that fully would require energy you don't have, so you push the thought away and keep moving. The afternoon is brutal, the heat is oppressive, and inside your leather coat you're cooking slowly. Sweat pours down your back, soaks your shirt, pools in your boots. Your vision keeps blurring, and you have to stop frequently to blink it clear. Your ears are ringing constantly now, a high-pitched whine that never stops. You're walking down a crowded street when your legs simply give out. One moment you're upright, the next you're on your knees on the cobblestones. People scatter around you, giving you space, probably afraid you've collapsed from plague. You kneel there, stick in hand, trying to remember how to stand up. Someone helps you eventually, a grown man, probably a labourer based on his rough clothes and calloused hands. He hauls you to your feet with surprising gentleness and asks where you're going. You manage to mumble an address, and he walks you there, supporting some of your weight. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand payment, just helps you to the door and then leaves. The patient at this house, the 6th, 7th, you've lost count, is barely conscious, fever-ridden and delirious. You should do a thorough examination, should carefully consider symptoms and treatments. Instead, you prescribe whatever herbs come to hand first and leave. The family pays you, but their expressions are doubtful. They know they didn't get their money's worth. You have 2 more patients to see. The thought feels impossible. 2 more houses, 2 more examinations, 2 more journeys through these endless streets. You're not sure you can do it. You're not sure you can take another step. But you do. Somehow, you do. You make it to the 7th patient, go through abbreviated motions, collect your fee, then to the 8th patient, where you can barely stay upright during the examination. Your hands are shaking so badly that you drop your stick twice. Your voice is weak and raspy when you speak. The patient's family looks more worried about you than about their sick relative. When you finally finish and leave the last house of the day, you stand outside for a long moment, trying to orient yourself towards home. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It's beautiful, objectively, but you're too exhausted to appreciate it. You just need to get home. The walk back is the longest journey you've ever made. Every step is conscious effort. Your feet are dragging, catching on cobblestones. You're weaving like a drunk, bouncing off walls, using your stick more as a crutch than anything else. People stare, but no one helps. A plague doctor struggling through the streets is apparently something to avoid rather than assist. You're almost home when you realize you're not going to make it. Your legs are done. They've carried you as far as they can and they're shutting down. You look around desperately for somewhere to rest, and you spot a church with steps leading up to its entrance. You stagger over and collapse onto the steps, your back against the stone wall. You sit there as darkness falls, as the streets empty, as the city transitions from day to night. The stone is cool against your back, and despite everything, It feels good to be still. Your legs are splayed out in front of you. Your stick has fallen from your nerveless fingers, and you're slumped against the wall like a discarded puppet. A priest comes out of the church eventually, probably to lock up for the night. He sees you sitting there and approaches cautiously. He asks if you're all right, if you need help. You try to answer, but what comes out is more of a groan than actual words. He stands there for a moment, clearly conflicted between Christian charity and fear of plague, and then he goes back inside. He returns with a cup of water and a heel of bread, which he sets down beside you before retreating quickly. You drink the water in desperate gulps, and it helps marginally. The bread is hard, but you gnaw on it anyway, getting some food into your protesting stomach. The priest watches from the doorway, and when you're done, he asks again if you need help. You shake your head and wave him away. He locks the church door and leaves, glancing back at you several times. You know you should get up. You know you should make it the last few streets to your lodgings, but your body is refusing to cooperate. You'll just rest here for a few more minutes, just a few more minutes, and then you'll get up. You wake up to someone shaking your shoulder roughly. It's a city watchman, a grown man with a suspicious expression and a hand on his weapon. He demands to know what you're doing sleeping on church steps. Are you drunk? Are you ill? Are you a vagrant? You try to explain that you're a plague doctor, that you just needed to rest, but it comes out confused and jumbled. He's not convinced. He hauls you to your feet, and you sway dangerously, your legs barely supporting you. He looks at you more closely, sees the plague doctor mask and coat, and his expression changes from suspicion to disgust. He tells you to move along, to get out of here, and he gives you a push in the direction of the residential quarter. You stumble away, using your stick to keep from falling. The watchman follows you for a few streets to make sure you're actually leaving, and then he turns back to continue his patrol. You're alone again, navigating dark streets by memory and instinct. You finally reach your building, and climbing the stairs is like scaling a mountain. You have to pull yourself up using the railing, your legs barely functioning. You reach your door and can't remember if you locked it or not. It doesn't matter. It opens when you push it, and you fall inside more than walk. The chicken squawks at your entrance, then settles back down. You lie on the floor where you fell, too exhausted to move. The rough wooden boards press into your cheek. Somewhere far away, your body is screaming at you, feet burning, back aching, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. But it's all distant now, happening to someone else. This day is different from the others only in that you're more aware of your own deterioration. You're watching yourself from a distance, observing the plague doctor stumbling through the streets, and you're thinking, that poor person doesn't have much longer. Then you remember that person is you. The first patient of the day is a grown woman with a fever. You examine her, but your hands are shaking so badly that you drop your stick twice. She asks if you're all right, and you nod, but you can see the doubt in her eyes. You prescribe herbs with names you can barely remember, collect a fee with hands that can barely grip the coins, and leave. Outside, the street tilts and spins. You lean against a wall, breathing hard through your herb-stuffed mask, waiting for the world to steady. It takes longer than it should. When you finally push away from the wall, your legs are trembling like those of a newborn foal. The second patient lives up 3 flights of narrow stairs. The climb takes forever. You have to stop at each landing, gasping for air, your heart hammering against your ribs. The family watches you struggle up their stairs, their expressions mixing concern with the dawning realization that perhaps they shouldn't have called this particular doctor. The patient is a grown man with a cough and general weakness. You go through your examination, But halfway through, you forget what you're looking for. You stand there, stick in hand, staring at the patient and trying to remember what comes next. The silence stretches awkwardly. The man's wife prompts you gently, asking if you need to check his breathing. Right. Breathing. You complete the examination mechanically and leave as quickly as your failing body allows. The stairs down are worse than the stairs up. You have to sit down and scoot on your backside for the final flight, because your legs simply won't support you anymore. The family watches from their doorway, and you can hear them discussing in low voices whether they should ask for their money back. Out in the street, a cart nearly runs you down. You didn't hear it coming, didn't see it approaching. The driver yanks his horse aside at the last moment, shouting curses at you. You stand there in the middle of the street, trying to understand what just happened, while traffic flows around you and people stare. You need to stop. You need to rest. But you have 6 more patients to see, and stopping means losing income, and losing income means not eating. So you keep going, dragging yourself from house to house, performing your role with decreasing competence. At the 3rd patient's house, you accidentally prescribe a herb that's meant for stomach complaints to someone with a cough. The patient's sister, who's been helping with care, corrects you politely. She clearly knows more about herbal remedies than you do, and she's being gentle about it, but the humiliation burns anyway. At the 4th patient's house, you nearly fall asleep during the examination. You're standing there, swaying, and your eyes close on their own. You jerk awake moments later to find the entire family staring at you with alarm. You mumble an apology and rush through the rest of the visit. Somewhere around midday, you lose time again. You're at a patient's house, and then you're 3 streets over with no memory of how you got there. Did you finish the examination? Did you collect the fee? You check your pouch. There are coins you don't remember receiving, so probably yes. You're supposed to eat lunch, but the thought of food makes you nauseous. You drink water from a public fountain, and your hands shake so badly that you spill most of it down your coat. A child points at you and laughs. Their parent shushes them and hurries them away. The 5th patient is in a house you visited before. You remember the family. The father died 2 weeks ago, and now the mother is sick. When they open the door and see you, their faces fall. You're not an encouraging sight. You look like death warmed over, and you're here to treat their dying mother. The irony is not lost on anyone. The examination is cursory because you can barely stay upright. You prescribe something. You're not even sure what anymore. You just grab herbs from your bag at random. The family pays you, but their expressions are grim. They know you're useless. You know you're useless. Everyone knows, but the ritual must be completed anyway. You're leaving the house when your vision goes completely dark. Not blurry. Dark. You can't see anything. You stand there, blind, one hand on the doorframe, terror rising in your throat. After several horrible seconds, your vision returns gradually, fading in from the edges. The family is staring at you from the doorway. You wave them off and stumble into the street. This is it, some part of your brain whispers. This is how it ends. You're going to collapse in the street, and someone will put you on the death cart, and that will be that. The plague doctor, killed not by plague, but by exhaustion and poverty and a system that grinds people down until there's nothing left. But not yet. Not today. You have 3 more patients to see, 3 more fees to collect. So you keep walking, even though each step might be your last. Left foot, right foot, repeat. The mantra that's kept you going for weeks. The 6th patient is a blur. You remember entering a house. You remember leaving a house. But everything in between is gone. Did you examine someone? Probably. Did you prescribe something? Presumably. Did you collect payment? Your pouch is heavier, so yes. The 7th patient asks you a direct question about prognosis, and you can't answer because you've forgotten what their symptoms are. You looked at them 3 minutes ago, but the information is already gone. You give a vague answer about trusting in higher powers and keeping faith, which is your way of saying, I have no idea and I'm barely conscious. The 8th and final patient of the day takes forever to reach, because you keep having to stop and rest. You're sitting on walls, leaning in doorways, propping yourself up with your stick. People give you wide berth, probably thinking you're plague-ridden yourself. Maybe you are. Maybe that would explain the fever you're running, the way everything hurts, the constant exhaustion. The last examination is the worst one yet. You can't remember the patient's name even though they just told you. You can't remember what you're supposed to be checking for. You stand there with your stick, looking at this sick person, and your mind is completely blank. They wait patiently, and eventually you just prescribe herbs and leave. You forget to collect payment. You're halfway down the street when you remember, but going back feels impossible, so you just keep walking. The journey home is a nightmare. The streets are endless, twisting and turning, leading nowhere. You're lost in a city you've walked through every day for months. Nothing looks familiar. Every turn takes you somewhere strange. You're walking in circles, and you know you're walking in circles, but you can't figure out how to break the pattern. Eventually, more by accident than design, you stumble onto your own street. You recognize the bakery, and relief floods through you so powerfully that you nearly collapse right there. You're home. You made it. One more day survived. The stairs are impossible. You crawl up them on your hands and knees, your stick clattering behind you as it falls from your nerveless fingers. You reach your door and can't work the latch. Your hands won't cooperate. Your fingers won't grip properly. You fumble with it for what feels like hours before it finally opens. You fall inside and lie on the floor. The chicken comes over to investigate, pecking at your mask. You don't have the energy to shoo it away. You just lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is how it ends. Not with drama or tragedy, but with simple exhaustion. Just worn down, used up, discarded,